Control and coordination. Right. So control and first of all I am going to discuss about control and coordination in animals or humans. Control and coordination. Right. So control and coordination in animals is maintained or is functioned by two different systems. We call nervous system and endocrine system. Endocrine system. So first of all we are going to discuss about this nervous system. Okay. So control and coordination in animals, in not only mammals, most of the animals, the control and coordination is maintained by nervous system and the endocrine system. So nervous system, first thing we are going to discuss about the nervous system. So nervous system, main two parts are there in the nervous system. Nervous system we can categorize, we can divide into two main parts: central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system is usually only the brain and the spinal cord. Central nervous system contains brain and the spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system is all other neurons. All other neurons. For example, if I draw that one, so here is the brain and the spinal cord. So this is a human. So the main control and coordination is done by these two big ones. So this is the first guy, this is the deputy, something like that. So this is the brain here and this is the spinal cord. So that is the central nervous system. The rest of the neurons, which is running from the brain to your hand like this, then to other body parts, legs like this. So that's contained peripheral nervous system. So peripheral nervous system is the one most of the time take the messages to the central command or central nervous system, then take away the message from the central nervous system to the other part of the body. So peripheral is basically doing a kind of communication, but all the decision making is done by brain and the spinal cord. So that's why we call it is central nervous system, CNS, central nervous system, right? But it doesn't matter central nervous system or peripheral nervous system, both of these systems are done or both of these systems are consist of special kind of specialized cells called neurons. Special kind of cells called neurons. Right? So let's discuss first of all about the neurons. Very important part. So the neurons, which means the nerve cells, those are kind of specialized cells. So these specialized cells, there are main three types of neurons you can find in your body. You can find a neuron which looks like this, which contain let's say a head-like structure, something like this. Then very long body, something like this, and ending with some leg-like structure like this. So this is one type of neuron, or most common type of, or typical. If someone asks you to draw a typical neuron, this is what you are drawing. So this type of neuron we call motor neuron. Motor neuron. We'll discuss their separate functions later. So this is motor neuron. So motor neuron, you can see the head-like structure. We call this is cell body. We call this one cell body. Then this elongated part we call axon, and the end of it we call dendrites. Dendrites. So if someone asks you to draw a typical neuron, this is what you are drawing, a motor neuron. And most importantly here, you can find on the axon another type of cells which covers it like this. Another type of cells are there which covers the axon. We call these are myelin, or the cell name is Schwann cells. Schwann is the name of that cell. And all together these Schwann cells, what they do, they make a myelin sheath. It's like this. So just imagine this is the axon. So now Schwann cell comes. So if you see from front, Schwann cell comes and wrap around it like this. So when you see it's like this, then another one comes like that, it goes. So that's how this axon is covered by the Schwann cell. So there's a importance for that. Why it has to be covered? Because the type of message these neurons are taking from one place to another place is electrical message. So electrical message is mainly traveling through these axons. So if there is no protection for the axon, what happens? That electricity can leak to outside. It just remember, it's like a wire without the rubber cover. So all the electricity that takes by the wire can be leaked to outside. So to prevent that, that's why the Schwann cells or the myelin sheaths are there. So that's another those are different cells which are placed on the axon. Okay, so it's not actually the nerve cell but supportive cells. Okay, so remember that. But you need to remember not actually about the Schwann cell part, the other part, cell body, axon and the dendrites, and the shape of this neuron belongs to the motor neuron. Remember that. Then other main type is like this. Like when you're comparing to the motor neuron, it is different because their cell body is in the middle, something like this. So I'll use the same color, it's easy. So cell body is something like this, which is here. Then the axons are running both ways and the dendrites are like this. So this is the other type of neuron. And again the Schwann cells are present on the axon like this. They are present covering, but you can see they are entirely different compared to the other one, compared to the motor one. So like this. So this is how this neuron located. So this neuron is known as sensory neuron. Sensory neuron. So the main difference is what? Main difference, basically cell body is in the middle, and the axons and the dendrites are in other side. That's the main difference between motor neuron and the sensory neuron. So what they are doing is they are not asking you to draw. They will give you the diagrams to identify which one is which. And not only that, we have one more thing. We have one more thing here, which is called relay neuron. Relay neuron. Relay neuron, you can easily remember, it is the same as the motor neuron. Only difference is what? Only difference, it is shorter. It's like this. Very small, but the same shape, like this. So the size is very small, like this. So that is the relay neuron. Remember the shapes of it. So they are asking, sometimes the parts they can ask, or most of the time, what type of neuron by giving the diagrams. That's what they are asking. Okay. So remember about the neurons. So let's go to the next part. How these neurons are making the nervous system. Right. So nervous system, as I mentioned, first thing first, the type of message they are carrying is electrical. Always nervous system carries electrical message. How these electrical messages are carrying, it is always following this very important flow chart I am going to say. So what is happening in the coordination? Now there are special kind of cells called receptor cells are present in our body. Receptors. Okay. So these receptors, the job of these receptors is to take or detect the changes that happens in the environment. Right? The function of these receptors are to detect the changes that happen in the environment. So these changes we call stimuli. Stimuli. You know examples. Example of these changes. What are those changes? It can be temperature, let's say heat. It can be light. It can be sound. It can be a chemical, a taste. So what they do, these receptors, they identify those changes. So we have receptors on our tongue to determine the taste of a food. So we have receptors on our eye to detect the light. We have receptors on our ear to detect the sound. So these receptors are present in our body. In the skin, you have so many receptors. We have receptors for the temperature. We have receptors for the touch. Like that, we have different receptors on the skin. So receptors' job is, remember, to gather the stimulation from the environment. Right. Then what they do, this is the most important part. After they gather the information, what they do is, they send that information to the very important CNS, Central Nervous System. So the function of the receptor is to collect or detect the changes, and after they, or if they detect the changes, they send that message to the central nervous system. That's what they do. So central nervous system can be the brain or spinal cord. I put spinal cord. Can be brain or spinal cord. Right? Okay. Now the thing is, after the CNS receives the message, what they do? They process it. So that's why we call it is central nervous system, because central nervous system, they process the message. I'll explain that more a little bit. For example, let's take this receptor I'm talking about here is the eye. So the receptors or the photoreceptors we call, these receptors in the eye, what they can detect is the light, not a picture. So if you see a plant or if you see a tree, that is not detected by the eye. The light coming from the plant only detected by the eye and send the message to the brain. Brain is the one develop the picture. Understand that, okay? So for example, if you feel a pain, so that message, the real pain comes from the brain, because the message from the receptors go here to the brain develops into a pain. So that's the important part of the CNS. So CNS gather the information, develops into something, process it basically. Remember that. So the message or the stimulation or changes detected by the receptors turn into a chemical message, sorry, electrical message, my mistake, electrical message, and sent to the CNS. Then what they do? CNS, after the process, they send that message to the effector. Effector. Effector means the one who is doing the response. Response. For example, sometimes when you feel something, when you detect something, you can just ignore without doing any response. But most of the time what you do, you process it, you do something. For example, let's say I have this pen here. Okay, so I have the pen here. Maybe you can see, yeah. So I want to take it, the pen. So what I'm doing, my eye sees pen is there. Now it goes, the message goes to the brain. Brain send the message to my arm, okay, take the pen. So receptor, the eye take the message, send to the brain send the message to my arm to take the pen. So they are following this pathway. Very nice example is this one. Let's take a batsman. Okay, it's very nice example. Let's take Virat Kohli. So Virat Kohli, what he's doing? So he's playing now. Just imagine someone, let's say Malingo, someone is bowling. So ball is coming around 140 kilometers per hour. So he sees the ball. So where it is going to be detected? From the eye. So the Virat Kohli's eye detect the ball released from the Malinga's hand and send the message to, that's all he is seeing, okay? He is seeing only the how he is running, how he send the ball. Or a ball is like swinging or something, like just the picture. Then that message goes to the brain. Brain determine what type of ball is that. Is it going to be a yorker? Is it going to be a bouncer? Is it out swinger or in swinger or whatever the ball? That processing part is done by the brain. Then after the processing, brain send the message to his arms and the legs and the neck and the entire body. Okay, the ball is a yorker, you play this shot. So that is the effector, which are the muscles, and the response is the shot he is playing. Response is the shot he is playing. So understood? So it is not that simple. And imagine ball is coming 140 kilometers per hour, how fast it should be done. Right? He sees the ball, he had to play a shot. So it's very fast procedure it is happening here. So that's the meaning of coordination. So Kohli is a very good batsman. Why? His coordination is very quick. Very quick, and he can play whatever the shot he wants. But just imagine we go there. Our coordination is not that good, we get it out. Because the time taken for the brain to process what to play, before we play the shot, ball is gone already. Right? So that's how the coordination has to be there. So some people, they can never can catch a ball or like play, like catch something. It misses. Why? Coordination is slow. So due to the gravity of the ball or whatever the thing is going to catch, it's just going down. So remember, always coordination is supposed to be very faster. Some people, it is more faster than the normal other people. So they are very good players. Okay. So like sports like badminton, then Formula 1 racing. So you can just imagine how fast this coordination has to be. Okay. Just an example to remember what is happening there. But most importantly, let's fill this diagram. It's not finished yet. Let's fill this diagram using neurons. So remember, we discussed 3 neurons. We discussed about sensory neuron, motor neuron and relay neuron. Now this is the most important part. Receptor to the CNS, message is taken by sensory neuron. From the receptors to the CNS, message is taken by sensory neuron. Remember that. From the CNS to the effector, the message is taken by motor neuron. From the CNS to the effector, the message is taken by motor neuron. And relay neuron is present inside the CNS. Relay neuron is present inside the CNS. Now, very important part, when they ask whatever the question regarding coordination, how a batsman playing a shot, or any other reaction, how you are taking or how you are drinking a coffee, how you take a book and read, any reaction or any response of your body has to follow this flow chart. There should be a receptor to see the stimulation. It can be a sound, it can be whatever the stimulation. Then sensory neuron should carry the message from the receptor to the CNS. CNS should process it. After the processing, CNS should send the message to the effector through the motor neuron. Effector is the one effector is the one actually doing response. Most of the time, effector is the muscle. It can be a muscle or a gland, we'll discuss about the gland later. Remember, so this is how you need to answer 3 mark or 4 mark question. You can easily get the marks if you follow the order. Don't just start somewhere in the middle. Start from the stimulation, end with the response. Easy marks. Easy marks. Okay? Right. So that's how electrical impulses are being transferred through the neurons from receptors to the effectors, then later the responses. Right. Now let's go to the other part. Now, as I mentioned, after the receptor impulses should reach the CNS. In the CNS, as I mentioned, it processes. But there are certain activities we don't have the time to process. For example, when we are in danger. Very good example like this. Just imagine this is very burning hot iron or something. Very red color, burning hot iron. Oh, let's say lava. Lava, I see, I don't know. At night, I can't see that somehow, right? So I'm accidentally going to touch it. So when I'm moving through this one, so I'm accidentally touch this one. But the thing is, if they follow the normal route, that means I have receptors in my skin. So they detect the temperature, send the message to my brain. Brain process. Processing means what? That is too hot. If I keep in the hand there, I'm going to be burned. So you need to take the arm away. So let's send the message to the muscle to take it away. See, even milliseconds are enough to burn my arm. Therefore, so those kind of things, they don't think, which means those type of reactions, what they do, they skip the brain. They skip the brain. So in those actions, the message from the receptors goes to the CNS, that is true, but not to the brain, to the spinal cord. So basically message from here not goes here and come back, it goes here and comes here back. That's all. It's not going up. Okay, so it comes here, quickly goes there. So as soon as I touch, I take my arm away because there's nothing to process. Right? So these actions we call reflex action. These actions we call reflex actions. The pathway we call reflex arc. Reflex actions or reflex arc. So reflex actions, what they do, so let's draw the same thing again. So in reflex actions, so we have the receptors. For example, let's say I'm going to step on a thorn or a nail, something. So this is my leg, right? So I'll put the leg a little bit down, then it's fine. So here. So this is my leg. I'm going to step on a nail or something. Accidentally. I didn't see. Now what happened? It's not like a leg, but just imagine it's a leg, okay? Right. Now what happened? I have receptors here. So my receptors on my skin, in my foot, they detect the pain. They send the message to the spinal cord. That's the thing. So the spinal cord is like this. So it is inside our backbone. So in the spinal cord, what happened? They are not sending the message to the brain by themselves. They send the message to the motor neuron. So here what we have what type of neuron is this one? So this is sensory neuron, as I mentioned. Remember? Sensory neuron is the one which take this message, send to the spinal cord. Spinal cord, we have relay neuron. From the relay neuron, they bypass the brain and send the message to the motor neuron. And this motor neuron is linked to where? So I'll use a different color, say like here. So to my muscle in my leg, something like this. So this is my muscle. So what happened? As soon as I feel the pain, they goes to the message to the spinal cord. Spinal cord bypass the brain through the relay neuron, through the motor neuron, send to the message to the leg to take it up. Okay. So here we have a sensory neuron, relay neuron, spinal cord here, inside the spinal cord, and we have motor neuron and the effector, which is the muscle. So no brain involvement. But the thing is this. Let's say 100 times you are going to step on a nail. Every day you are stepping on a nail. What happened? Same reaction. Because no brain is involved means you can't create a thing. Always you are taking the leg away. Right? So remember that. So these reflex actions, the main key points you should know. No brain involvement that we discussed. Therefore it is automatic. They are quicker because they are bypassing the brain, and automatic means we are using another word we call involuntary. So it is automatic or involuntary actions. So these reflex action most of the time happens to protect you from a danger. So these reflex action most of the time happens to protect you from a danger. Remember that, okay? Very nice examples are there. For example, let's say, like what? Fly is coming towards your eye. Then you tilt your head or you close your eyelids. That is reflex action. So you are entering a darker room, someone going to frighten you, they scream from inside from the room. So what happened? You also scream. Reflex action. Okay, so those are reflex. You don't know that happens. Automatically, it happens without thinking. Right? After the reaction occurs, only brain know what happened. They send the message a little bit later. Right? So remember the reflex actions, they are quicker, no brain involvement, automatic or involuntary actions. They are faster. Why? Because the brain is skipped. They skip the brain, they send the message from there to there very quickly. Reflex actions. Right? Interesting thing about this one. By practicing the same thing again and again, what we can do, we can try normal action. So normal actions we call voluntary action. You think and do. They are not automatic. So voluntary action we can try to by forcefully to put into the reflex way. That means, for example, let's take the Virat Kohli again. Virat Kohli is playing the same shot again and again. 1,000 times. He is playing for the yoga. Right? Not 1,000, millions times he is playing the same shot again, putting the balls to the machines, play the same shot again and again. Then what happened? Actually, you don't need the brain. Why? Whenever the same ball comes, no need to send the message to the brain. Spinal cord we can think is not truly happens, right? But it somewhat to some extent it happens. Spinal cord can send the message to the brain, to the muscles to play this shot. So that's how practice makes you better. So more the practice you do, what happens? Normal actions can turn into reflex actions and you can be quicker. So if you think and play the shot, or without thinking play the shot, you know which one is better. So that's why they are better sportsmen, because they practice a lot. But the thing is, if you don't practice for a few months, you lose that ability. Someone can call this muscle memory. Same scenario. Okay. So more you practice, more the voluntary actions turn into involuntary actions. But they can't remember. It's not the brain. So after some time, it can be disappeared from your system. Okay. So remember, this is how reflex action is done. So we discuss about neurons. We discuss about how the coordination, normally voluntary coordination is being done. And we discuss now about the reflex action. Reflex actions, right? Okay. So let's move to the next part. Very important one, tricky part. Now let's take the brain and my leg. So I have the brain here. Let's say this is the brain, and I have my leg here. You know, like normally, let's say this is 5 feet there between the leg and the brain. So the distance is 5 feet here. Now brain needs to send a message to my feet. But the thing is, we don't have neurons which can travel straight away from the brain to the leg, because these are cells. Cells are smaller. You know that. So there's no one single cell, there's no one single wire as like we can think to run from the brain to the leg. So what we have is something like this. From the brain, just imagine this is a motor neuron. From the brain, motor neuron starts. Many motor neurons join together to send the message down to the leg like this. Then finally it comes here. This is how the message is transferred, by connecting many neurons together. But we have a problem. You know what type of message is transferring, which is electrical. But what the problem? Problem is here there are some gaps. See, gaps are there. So if it is electricity, how these electricity or impulses can transfer from through a gap? Can the electricity jump out of your switch and electrocute you? No way. Always you have a connection. If it is like that, electricity can never jump. Right? So let's see how this electricity is going to pass from other end of the gap to the next end of the gap. So I am expanding this part. Expanding this part. Right. So I am drawing. So this is the end of the first neuron. And this is the beginning of the next neuron. Beginning of the next neuron. Right? End of the first neuron, this part, and the beginning of the next neuron, other part. And this gap between these two neurons, here to here, we call synaptic gap. Synaptic gap or synaptic cleft also fine. Synaptic gap or synaptic cleft. So what happens here? Before the synaptic gap, the neuron which is present before the synaptic gap, we call presynaptic neuron. Presynaptic neuron. The neuron present just after the gap we call postsynaptic neuron. Postsynaptic neuron. Remember the words post and pre. Pre means before, post means after. You have to remember the names. Right. Then the membrane before the synaptic gap, this membrane. So this is cell surface membrane, you know. The membrane before the synaptic gap, this membrane we call presynaptic membrane. I put like this, presynaptic membrane, which means you know what is this one is postsynaptic membrane. Postsynaptic membrane. Right. So main labeling part is done. Right, now this is the thing you need to remember. From this end, now brain is sending a message to move my leg. Okay, brain is sending a message through the motor neurons to move my leg. So that impulse is now coming from this end. So this end can be the brain. From the brain, message is coming. And message is what type of message? I put E, electrical impulse. Electrical impulse. Now what is happening? Very important thing. Here inside the presynaptic neuron, you can find special packets of some chemicals. Special packets of some chemicals. So these packets are known as vesicles. Vesicles. Right? So these are the vesicles. Very important vesicles. And the chemical they have inside is another very important one we call neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters. So inside the presynaptic neuron we have vesicles containing neurotransmitters. Vesicles containing neurotransmitters. Vesicles containing neurotransmitters. Okay, so when the electrical impulses are coming, what happen? These vesicles containing neurotransmitters, they start to move towards the presynaptic membrane. So all of these guys are moving towards the presynaptic membrane. And after that, what happened? After they move through the presynaptic membrane, what happened? They go and fuse with it. So they go and fuse with this membrane. That's what happened. Like this. After they fuse, what happened to the neurotransmitters? After they fuse, all these neurotransmitters will be released into the synaptic cleft or synaptic gap. We call diffusion of neurotransmitters. Diffusion of neurotransmitters. Right. Now again, electrical impulses are coming from the brain. When they are reached into the postsynaptic neuron, vesicles containing neurotransmitters starts to move towards the presynaptic membrane. And once these vesicles containing neurotransmitters fuse with the presynaptic membrane, all the neurotransmitters will be released into the synaptic cleft. Half of the story is done. Right. Now here, postsynaptic membrane. Postsynaptic membrane have receptors to detect that neurotransmitters. Like this. It's like antenna. So postsynaptic membrane, they have receptors to these neurotransmitters. So what happened? These neurotransmitters go and bind with these receptors. They go and bind with these receptors. If the neurotransmitters bind with the receptors of the postsynaptic membrane, new electrical impulses will be generated from the postsynaptic membrane. New impulses will be generated from the postsynaptic membrane. So now what happened? Electrical impulse came, message converted to chemical message. I put C here, then again back to electrical impulse. That is how impulse is moving through the synaptic gap to the next end and moving forward. So everywhere in this place, this occurs, this place occurs, this place occurs, everywhere. Where there is a gap or synaptic gap, this reaction occurs. So this entire thing we call synapse. That means synaptic gap, presynaptic neuron, postsynaptic neuron, the entire picture we call synapse. Clear? So that is how the message is moving forward. One more time before we go to the next part. So synapses are the gaps between the neurons. Synapse contains synaptic gap. Before the synaptic gap contain presynaptic membrane and presynaptic neuron, then the postsynaptic membrane and postsynaptic neuron. When the impulses are coming from one end, the vesicles containing neurotransmitters in the presynaptic neuron starts to move towards the presynaptic membrane and fuse with it. and neurotransmitters will be released into the synaptic cleft. Neurotransmitters will be attached to the receptors on the postsynaptic membrane, which resulting impulse to be generated. So that's how synapses facilitate the movement of impulses from one end to one end. But the thing is, really this is chemical message. Electrical to chemical to electrical there. But still you can think
Recording in progress.
something happened, I don't know. Now can you hear well, right? Everyone? Can everyone hear me nicely? Put a thumbs up if you can hear me. Guys, can you hear me? Hear me well, right? Everyone fine? No problem? No problem, right? Ashas, fine? Send me a message. Okay, everyone said good. Fine. Right, so this is how basically neurotransmitters and impulses are being transferred from one end to other thing. Okay, so I hope everyone got it nicely. If you have any questions, just put to the chat section. So at the end, I'll check and answer you all the questions. So even I can explain it again. So I'm not erasing this. I'll just go into the next page and continue. I hope you get, this is the hardest part basically you need to remember. Okay, so this is the hardest part. They can ask the questions from the nerve impulses. Now, very interesting thing. Here, you know, anesthetic drugs. Anesthetic drugs means the drugs being using for the surgeries. When they are taking, when they are pulling your teeth out, what they do? They put an injection, you don't feel a thing. So what they do there? So they put an injection with a chemical to block these receptors. So once these receptors are blocked, what happens? The message is coming, there's a pain, someone cutting your skin, but it is not going to the other end. The brain won't get the message of pain, so you don't feel a pain. So that's how they do. Temporarily, they block the receptors. So the pain message from the receptors will not be going towards the brain there. Sometimes venoms, you know, snake venoms like cobra or viper venom, what they do? They block these receptors permanently. So if those snakes come and bite the, let's say they bite a rat or someone, they just put their venom to the rat. What happened? Rat's brain sending the message to the muscle, run, there's a snake behind you. But the thing is what? All the venom goes and block the receptors. So brain says to run, but message is not going to the leg. So they can't run. Then the snake come and eats them. So that's how snakes' venoms are working. So remember, so this is the place where they manipulate by using different drugs. So even the drugs we have, recreational drug, for example, ice, ecstasy, the bad drugs, they are also interfering with this part. So actually what they do, they imitate. There are no real neurotransmitters. Those drugs acting as neurotransmitters. So what they do, without really sound or let's say vision, they go and bind to the receptors. So you are hallucinating. You are hearing so many sounds. You are seeing different colors. But actually from the other end, there's no real color or something. So what happened? those drugs come and stimulate this part, there's a sound, there's a monster behind you, like that, they trigger your system. So that's how these things are working, remember. Okay, so that's about the neurotransmitters, very important one.